B&B spoilers. Carter Walton's Rebound romance puts him in danger? The bold and the beautiful spoilers hint Carter Walton will be back on the prowl soon on the CBS soap. But the new woman in his life could bring big drama for the Forrester Creations CEO. Word on the internet is Daphne Rose could be hiding a dark past, and it could mean trouble for the FC hunk. Is Carter Walton, Lawrence St. Victor, about to take an uncharacteristic walk on the wild side? Keep reading to find out. Here's what's coming up next on Bold and Beautiful. Spoilers down below. Daphne waits to make her move. Daphne Rose has been lurking around Carter for weeks, and after his engagement falls apart, she will be happy to give him a shoulder to cry on. Daphne Rose, Muriel Hilaire, and Carter did a lot of flirting at Forrester Creations, but Hope Logan, Annika Noel, was quick to put a kibosh on that. The bold and the beautiful spoilers say that as soon as Carter is back on the market, Daphne will be trying to get him in her bed. But word on the internet is Daphne the nose. Rose might turn out to be a dangerous rebound choice. What is Daphne Rose hiding? A few months ago, Brad Bell hinted in an interview that there were some new faces coming to B&B this fall. The showrunner specifically mentioned new character Daphne Rose and hinted that a shady person from her past could follow her to Los Angeles. He also teased that the perfume queen has been keeping quite a few secrets about her previous life, and there could be some big drama coming up in Daphne's world. Carter Walton's romances have always been pretty standard and frankly a little boring. Carter's relationship track record is uneventful, to say the least. Will Daphne Rose change that? Carter Walton had learned the hard way that love in Los Angeles never came without consequences. His last heartbreak had been sharp enough to leave him cautious, but not entirely numb. Yet, after months of focusing on work, pouring himself into contracts, negotiations, and the Forrester legacy, the loneliness had begun creeping in again. He told himself he was fine. He told himself love could wait. But deep down, Carter craved connection. Something real, something stable, something that didn't end in shattered trust. But fate, as always in LA, had a twisted sense of humor. A new face in Los Angeles. Everything began changing the morning a new consultant walked into Forrester Creations. Her name was Isabella Reed, a high-end luxury brand strategist sent to help Forrester expand its global reach. Tall, poised, and stunning with sharp eyes that looked like they saw straight through people, Isabella instantly captured attention, especially Carter's. She introduced herself with a confident handshake and a smile that felt like electricity. "Carter Walton," he said, meeting her gaze longer than necessary. "I know," she replied with a soft laugh. "Your reputation precedes you." From the start, there was an energy between them, something unspoken, intoxicating. Ridge raised a brow, amused. Katie glanced at Carter with a warning expression. And Brooke whispered to Hope, "Here we go again." But Carter didn't care. For the first time in a long time, something felt exciting. Fast attraction, faster complications. By the end of the first week, Carter and Isabella had shared late-night strategy meetings, long glances, and subtle flirtations. One evening, as the rest of the building emptied, she leaned closer to him, her perfume soft and expensive. "You're different from what I expected," she murmured. "How so?" "Most powerful men here pretend they're untouchable." She touched his wrist lightly. "You, Carter Walton, wear your heart in the open." Carter wasn't used to someone seeing him so clearly, so quickly, and for once he didn't retreat. One lingering look became a dinner. Dinner became a romantic confession, and confession became a kiss that changed everything. Soon they were inseparable, caught up in a whirlwind romance that blurred lines between office and intimacy, rumors, jealousy, and old wounds. But Los Angeles never lets lovers stay hidden. Within days, the Forrester hallways buzzed with whispers. Quinn's name surfaced more than once, as if the ghosts of Carter's past trauma refused to stay buried. Katie, trying to be delicate, pulled Carter aside. "Are you sure this is the right thing? You move fast when you're hurting." I just don't want to see you broken again. Carter forced a smile. I'm not hurting anymore. I'm hopeful. But inside, Katie's concern echoed in his mind. Was he chasing affection to fill a void? Or was Isabella someone truly different? Yet every time doubt crept in, Isabella erased it with a touch, a smile, a whisper promising loyalty and partnership. The first red flag. Then came the moment everything shifted. Carter arrived early at Forrester one morning, hoping to surprise Isabella with coffee. But before he reached her office, he heard voices. Her voice, not soft and flirtatious, sharp, cold, calculating. No, I don't need more time. She snapped at someone on a phone call. I told you I'm working on it. He trusts me. Once I have what I need, we move forward. Carter froze. His breath caught. Was she talking about him? About Forrester? Before he could make a sound, she turned and saw him standing there. Instantly, her expression softened into innocence. Carter, she purred. You're early. He tried to mask the tension. Everything okay? She stepped into his arms. Just business, nothing important. But something inside him stirred uneasily. Still, he said nothing that a dangerous secret. Over the next days, cracks began forming. Carter noticed Isabella asking unusually specific questions about Forrester's accounts, confidential contracts, and vendor lists. Information far beyond her role. When he tried gently deflecting, she disguised her frustration with affection. Baby, I just want to help. We're a team, aren't we? Those words felt heavy, almost rehearsed. Later, Ridge called Carter into his office. I don't want to interfere, Ridge began, leaning forward. But legal caught multiple access attempts to restricted files through Isabella's credentials. Carter's stomach dropped. You're saying she's spying? I'm saying something doesn't add up. And I'm worried for the business and for you. Carter didn't argue. For the first time, he was scared. Confrontation or heartbreak. That night, Carter drove to Isabella's penthouse, not angry but searching for truth. She opened the door with a smile that quickly faded when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Tell me you're not using me. Tell me you're not here for Forrester. Her eyes hardened, not with guilt, but with something darker. Carter, don't make this dramatic. You accessed confidential files. Ridge knows. Legal knows. She crossed her arms. And what are you going to do? Throw me out? Turn me in? Break your own heart just to protect that company? Her words stabbed deeper than he expected. I trusted you, Carter whispered. For a moment, Isabella's facade cracked, not into remorse, but into frustration. You were supposed to fall faster. You were supposed to give me what I needed before anyone noticed. Carter stepped back. Daphne Knight replayed the same scene in her head. Her walking into Forrester Creations, looking confident and unstoppable in him, Thomas Forrester, finally noticing her. Not as a quiet designer tucked behind a stack of sketches, not as the dependable intern who never complained, but as the woman who could change everything. But until now, she hadn't made her move. Daphne wasn't bold by nature, but she was strategic. Her mother always called her the chess player in a family full of checkers. And if there was one thing she understood more than fashion, more than passion, more than the thrill of a secret, it was timing. And right now, timing was finally on her side. Chapter 1, The Shift. Hope Logan's laughter echoed from the design room, and Thomas stood beside her, smiling in that quiet way he reserved only for people who mattered. Daphne's heart sank, even though she tried, desperately, not to let it. Hope. Always hope. Even when they weren't together, hope was the center of Thomas's gravity. Daphne had watched their dynamic for months. Lingering looks, brushes of hands, stolen moments that never turned into anything real. Some might call it longing. She called it weakness. Not for him, for her. Hope didn't choose Thomas. Not fully. Not permanently. Not in a way he could build a life on. And Daphne could, if he just saw her. Chapter 2, The Catalyst. It was past 8 when the office finally grew quiet. Thomas stayed late. He always did when his mind was racing. Daphne stayed too, pretending she was fine-tuning sketches, though really she was waiting. The silence stretched into possibility. She approached slowly. "You're redesigning the Milan line again?" she asked softly. Thomas looked up, startled at first, but then he relaxed, as if relieved someone else was still here. "Yeah," he sighed. "Hope wants something fresh, something unpredictable, something emotionally charged." Daphne smiled thoughtfully. "You say that like it isn't impossible," she said, sitting beside him. He looked over, and this time he didn't look past her. "It's not impossible," he said. "Just lonely." Her pulse kicked. "You don't have to do it alone," she murmured. Their eyes held for too long. Then his phone buzzed. "Hope, of course." The spell broke. Without thinking, Thomas answered. Voice gentle, too gentle. Daphne stood quietly, masking the pain sharp enough to bruise bone. She walked back to her desk, expression neutral. Inside, something shifted. Hope wasn't choosing Thomas, so Daphne would. Chapter 3: The Strategy. The next morning, everything changed, subtle, quiet, calculated. Daphne wore confidence like couture, fitted, intentional, flawless. Not bold, just noticeable. She styled her dark hair loose instead of twisted into a low bun. Her clothing shifted from soft neutrals to sculpted silhouettes. Not flashy, not desperate, just unforgettable. And Thomas noticed. Then he noticed again, and again. But she didn't rush. She didn't flirt. She didn't compete with Hope Logan. No one won that game. Instead, she became the one thing Hope wasn't. Unavoidable. She worked beside Thomas, listened when he vented, offered ideas before he even asked, understood his patterns, his frustrations, his brilliance. Soon, other people noticed too. Brooke complimented her. Ridge asked her opinion. Steffi started involving her in executive conversations. And Hope? Hope watched her, curious or threatened. Daphne couldn't tell, but she didn't care, because Thomas finally saw her, not as background but as a contender. Chapter 4: The Crack. 2 weeks later, Daphne walked into the design room and saw Hope and Thomas inches apart. Close enough that someone might think they were about to kiss. Except Hope stepped back the second she saw Daphne. Thomas's jaw tightened. Daphne acted like she saw nothing. Thomas, the Paris fabric supplier, confirmed the shipment change, she reported smoothly. They'll have the new silk blend ready by Monday. Thomas blinked, surprised. That fast? I negotiated directly. He stared at her, impressed, grateful. Hope folded her arms. Wow, she said with a hint of polite sharpness. You're really stepping up. Someone needed to, Daphne replied with a sweet smile that carried teeth. Hope blinked, startled. Thomas cleared his throat. Daphne, can we go over the line revisions? He asked. Hope froze. That had always been her moment. Her time. Her work. Daphne nodded, professional, poised. But inside, she tasted victory. Chapter 5: The Almost. Hours passed in creative chaos. Fabric swatches, digital rendering, heated debate, shared sparks. Then something happened neither expected. Their hands touched, not accidental, not fleeting. Electric. Thomas paused. Daphne didn't look away. You're talented, he said quietly. More than this job requires. You know that, right? Her breath caught, but she didn't tremble. I know what I'm capable of, she whispered. I'm just waiting for the moment everyone else realizes it. He smiled, soft, but dangerous. You don't need to wait. He moved closer, not fully, not enough to define, but enough to shift the air. Their lips almost touched. Almost. But then a noise cut across the room. Hope, standing in the doorway. Frozen. Hurt. Jealous. Thomas moved back, not far, but enough to create space Hope could step into. Daphne didn't flinch. Instead, she whispered, Good night, Thomas, and walked out, slow, deliberate, unforgettable. She didn't need the kiss. Not yet. Not until the moment mattered. Chapter 6. Confrontation. The next morning, Hope pulled Daphne aside. "You and Thomas looked close last night." Daphne's eyes widened with practiced innocence. "Oh." Hope frowned. "I care about him." Past tense or present? Daphne wondered. She smiled politely. "So do I." Hope stiffened. "What exactly are you doing?" Daphne tilted her head. "Working. Growing. Existing." She paused. "Something I don't need permission for." Hope inhaled sharply, stunned. Daphne leaned in, voice velvet soft but sharpened by truth. "You had years to choose him. You didn't. So maybe step aside and let someone who actually sees him have a chance." Hope didn't respond. She couldn't. Daphne walked away. Heels sharp, posture perfect, victory humming in her veins. Chapter 7. The Move. That night, Daphne waited, not out of hesitation, but precision. Thomas was in his office again, tired, frustrated, brilliant. She knocked softly. He looked up, and something in his expression changed the moment he saw her. Not curiosity, not surprise, recognition, as if he finally understood what she was offering, and what she wasn't afraid to take. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice quiet. Daphne stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I think it's time," she said. "For what?" She moved closer, close enough he couldn't pretend not to feel it. "For you to stop waiting for someone who doesn't choose you." His breath hitched, "and to see the person who has been here all along." Silence. Sharp. Electric. Unavoidable. Thomas lifted his hand, slow, unsure, before letting it settle gently against her jaw. "You're not like anyone else," he murmured. Daphne smiled. "No, I'm not." Then, finally, deliberately, perfectly, the town of Willow Ridge had always been slow, predictable, and painfully ordinary, exactly the way most of its residents liked it. Nothing ever truly changed. The same church bells rang every Sunday, the same bakery sold its cinnamon rolls at dawn, and the same gossip circulated until it turned stale and harmless. So when Daphne Rose arrived 6 months ago, she became the town's most delicious mystery. She had shown up in a storm, not just metaphorically, but literally, stepping out of a sleek black car during a thunderous downpour, dragging a single suitcase behind her. She'd rented the old Harrington house on Maple Lane, a place that had been empty since old Mrs. Harrington moved to assisted living. The house was large, too large for one young woman, but Daphne paid the year's rent up front and asked no favors. And just like that, she became Willow Ridge's most whispered-about resident. Her looks only fueled the curiosity. Dark auburn hair, careful posture, and eyes that seemed to hold storms of their own. She dressed elegantly, always in shades of cream, black, or burgundy. There was something poised, almost trained, about her. She rarely smiled, and if she did, it was a fragile thing barely held together. No one knew where she came from. No one knew why she never received visitors. No one knew why she avoided cameras, mirrors, and questions. But everyone wondered. What is Daphne Rose hiding? Chapter 1. The Invitation. The first real attempt to socialize her came from the mayor's wife, Eleanor Whitman, a woman who believed no resident should remain unobserved, especially a new one. Eleanor formalized the attempt with a printed invitation. Harvest Moon Charity Gala, hosted by the Willow Ridge Women's League. Eleanor hand-delivered it to Daphne's porch, pretending it was casual, though she'd rehearsed her opening line 4 times. Daphne opened the door before Eleanor even knocked. Her eyes were startling, sharp, observant, impossible to look away from. "Oh, hello," Eleanor said, startled. "I was just leaving this invitation for you." Daphne glanced at it, but didn't reach for it. "A gala," she murmured. "What's the cause?" "The Children's Hospital," Eleanor said. "We raise funds each year." For a moment, something in Daphne's expression changed, softened, deepened, then shuttered itself again. "I'll attend," she said. Thank you. Her voice was gentle, but sterile, like someone reading words they didn't feel. Chapter 2. Rumors in Gold and Wine. On the night of the gala, Daphne arrived wearing a floor-length emerald velvet gown. It clung to her delicately, as if whispering secrets of her past. The room quieted when she walked in, not out of admiration, but out of instinctive awareness. Some people enter spaces unnoticed. Others shift the atmosphere simply by existing. Daphne was the latter. Eleanor nearly tripped over herself, rushing to greet her. "Oh dear, look at you. Absolutely stunning." Daphne smiled politely, but her eyes drifted elsewhere, toward the balcony, toward the moonlight, toward distance. A group of women gathered near the refreshments table whispered, "She's too polished to be ordinary. She never says anything personal. She has no social media, not even an old Facebook page. I heard she used a false last name on the rental paperwork. I heard she used to be married and ran away." "You're all wrong," another voice chimed in. "She's hiding from someone." That last whisper was spoken by Mara Benson, the town's librarian, sharp-witted, shy, and far less easily convinced by gossip than the others. Mara didn't spread rumors. She analyzed them. She watched Daphne that night, not out of suspicion but curiosity. And Daphne noticed. Their eyes met across the room. For the first time, Daphne's expression wasn't cold or distant. It was afraid. Chapter 3. The Photograph. 2 weeks after the gala, Willow Ridge woke to unexpected news. A stranger had come to town, a man. Tall, handsome, confident, wearing an expensive suit. He went to the sheriff's office first, then the cafe, then the inn. Everywhere he went, he asked the same question. "Have you seen a woman named Daphne Rose?" By the time the sun set, the town knew 2 things. The stranger was wealthy and important. He was searching for Daphne. But when Sheriff Perry finally visited Daphne's house, the door stood open, curtains fluttering from the breeze. She was gone. Only one thing remained on the dining table. A photograph. A young girl, laughing, holding a cupcake with a candle. Beside her sat Daphne, years younger, smiling brightly. And behind her stood a man with the same sharp eyes as the stranger in town. At the bottom of the photograph, written in careful pen, "For Lily, forever." Chapter 4. The Truth in Shadows. Mara was the only one bold enough to enter Daphne's now empty house without knocking. Something inside her insisted she needed to. She found the photograph still on the table, but now someone else was holding it. Daphne. She stepped from the shadows like someone who'd never left. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You disappeared," Mara said softly. "The whole town is worried, and someone is looking for you." "I know," Daphne replied. "I heard." Her voice trembled, not with fear, with grief. Mara swallowed. "Daphne, who is Lily?" Daphne closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the mask she'd worn since her first day in Willow Ridge finally cracked. "My daughter." Mara gasped, hand pressed to her mouth. "But I thought you lived alone." "I do now." Daphne's voice shattered. "Because she's gone." Something inside Mara shifted, from curiosity to compassion. "Daphne," she whispered, "what happened?" Daphne sank into a chair and stared at the floor. "My husband, Evan Rose, was powerful, influential, and adored by the world. But behind closed doors," her hands clenched, "he was controlling, manipulative, dangerous." Mara's breath caught. "When Lily was 5, Daphne continued, she became sick. Nothing severe at first, just a fever. But Evan refused to take her to the hospital. He said doctors were for weak people, that she would recover." Her voice trembled harder. She didn't. Silence filled the room. Thick, suffocating. "I took her," Daphne whispered. "I drove her to the hospital myself." A tear slipped down her cheek. "But it was too late." Mara felt her own eyes sting. That night, I decided I would never let Evan hurt anyone again. Not me. Not Lily's memory. So you disappeared, Mara said. Yes. Daphne nodded. I ran. I needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one asked questions. Mara finally understood everything. The stillness, the isolation, the haunted silence in Daphne's eyes. But now he's here, Daphne said. And he'll force me back. Not because he loves me, he never did. But because I left. Because I disobeyed. Mara shook her head fiercely. You're not alone anymore. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. That night, Evan Rose came to the Harrington house. The moon hung low. The town was quiet. The porch light glowed like a warning. Mara, Sheriff Perry, and Eleanor Whitman stood beside Daphne, not as acquaintances, but as a shield. Evan stopped at the gate, eyeing the small crowd with disdain.